We're heading into week 8 of the fantasy football season. We've had some surprising performances from players, both good and bad. Let's go over some of the biggest names and decide, are these players we're going to trust or are they going to bust? Before we get to that list, don't forget this is the best time to sign up for Underdog. New customers, take advantage of the special. Jalen Hurts just needs 1 yard this Sunday, and that's a free pick 'em for you. You can combine it with any other pick that you like to triple your money. And just for signing up as a new customer, if you use promo code ENDGAME or just click the link down below, you get a 100% deposit match up to $500. So if you haven't tried it out, what are you waiting for? Check it out now. First name I think we need to talk about here is a guy that I honestly have no idea what to make of. Deshaun Watson, quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Or is he just going to be on the bench? Because this is the second time that we've seen in week 7 where he was cleared to play but didn't. Is it concussion? Was it the shoulder again? Is he hurt? Does he just not want to play? What do we do here?
Yeah, who knows what's going on with him. But here's the thing. Even when he has played, he's been mostly bad. And in that game, I mean, he could have really had 3 interceptions before leaving that game, which is crazy because he barely played. So this is it. I'm done with him. I thought he could rebound this year. I thought he would be a good value. But at this point, completely done with this guy. For me, Deshaun Watson, he's a bust.
You're right. I mean, even forgetting all of that stuff that's going on and whether he plays or doesn't, just looking at the numbers, there's no reason to hold out hope here. Only a 61.7% completion rate, 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. When he's on the field, he's not really helping you enough, so I'm just declaring him a bust and I'm moving on. All right, another talented veteran player who can't seem to stay healthy either, Aaron Jones. Look, we want that upside at running back. He's still a talented player, but is there just too much risk now?
Yeah, not only is there a lot of risk, I mean, the offense isn't looking great. A.J. Dillon's pretty heavily involved. Like, this was a guy that already had a lot of risk. He was up there in touches. He was up there in age. I talk about this a lot. We may be seeing signs of that. Wasn't really on Aaron Jones, during the draft process. Nothing I've seen has changed my mind. I'm going to say Aaron Jones, also a bust.
No, you definitely were warning everyone away from him, and now we're seeing why. So far this season, only 22 carries and 6 catches. You could say, well, once he's healthy, he could be back. But when he has been playing, he's only averaging 4.3 yards per carry. He just doesn't look like the same guy when he is on the field. And like you said, this Green Bay offense, they're 20th in points, 28th in yardage. Maybe the upside just isn't there. So as much as I want to trust, I'm going to have to say I think he's a bust too. And now running back that not long ago we were saying you have to start him. He's getting all the touches. It's his backfield, and it's still true. But Josh Jacobs just hasn't been good. How worried are we?
I'm very worried. And look, I was the guy telling you to go out and trade for him, because he was getting such great usage. But man, he looked horrible. This run game looks horrible. You got to wonder, 395 touches last year. We talked about it during the offseason. Running backs that get that kind of usage see a massive drop in efficiency the next year a lot of times. We're seeing that. Look, I think Josh Jacobs will be fine. Like, he'll be an okay running back. But for somebody you drafted in the second round, that guy's probably not coming back this year. So for that reason, I'm going to say bust.
Well, you said it. The good thing is that he's getting so many touches. But the problem is that he's getting so many touches. Got the most last year among running backs. Right now, he's second in the league in rushing attempts. But it doesn't matter because he's not even averaging 3 yards per carry. How do you do that and still hold on to that job? I mean, he's going to have it, and sure, just by sheer volume alone, he could have fantasy relevance. But I think this is the time to get out and sell high, I guess, if you can call it that. I'm just going to say he's a bust. Now let's talk about a wide receiver who really hasn't been bad, but he's been disappointing. And I know a lot of people saw on Thursday night last week, a little blow up with Derek Carr. So Chris Olave, which side are you on? Trust or bust?
Yeah, I think the way you worded it is perfect. He hasn't been bad. He's just been disappointing for where you drafted him, but he's still a good player. He's getting ridiculous amounts of targets, 10 or more targets in all but 2 games this year. It's going to turn around for Chris Olave. I am definitely still trusting him.
Well, on the receiver side, he's a guy who's also getting a lot of opportunities, but not being too efficient. 68 targets, that's a lot, and that's encouraging. but only a 57% catch rate. I mean, one touchdown, that's not doing it for you. But you got to remember, Derek Carr was banged up for a week or two. There's some weird things going on in this offense. He's talented. He's getting the looks. I'm going to keep the faith. Look, maybe he won't be a top 10 fantasy receiver, but I think he's good enough here. I'm going to hold and trust. All right, let's talk about a guy that we definitely did not expect to be talking about mid-season 2023 because he wasn't even on an NFL roster until recently. That's Darrell Henderson, who's back with the Rams. He's the lead back, technically, right now. Is that enough for you to trust him?
Well, this one I've got to say with like a bit of a caveat here because you know he's not going to be the lead back all season long. Kyren Williams is coming back. If you're only going to try to trust him for this short term until Kyren Williams comes back, then yes, I'm going to say I trust because I think he will be the lead back until at least Kyren Williams gets back.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the short term you can play him, but I will say for me, it doesn't come with a lot of trust because this is a guy who is still splitting carries, at least he did last week, with Royce Freeman. I could easily see McVay flip the switch and say, okay, Freeman, you're the guy now. You know, it seems like his doghouse is pretty big. I'm just going to say I can't do this. If I pick up Henderson, I'm immediately flipping him, which means for my purposes, I'm calling it bust. All right, now let's get to Washington and Brian Robinson. This is a player I loved in the preseason. Looked good in the early part of the season, but he's starting to slip a little bit. Are you keeping the faith here or no?
Yeah, I liked Brian Robinson a lot too in the preseason. But man, what's concerning for me is, yeah, okay, he's slipping a little bit. But what's really concerning for me is his usage has slipped a lot. Even in games where it's competitive, we're not seeing him get 15 plus carries. He saved his day with touchdowns the last couple of weeks, but like rookie Chris Rodriguez is starting to come on. I'm not feeling good about Brian Robinson. He is a guy I'd be trying to trade away right now, so I got to put him as a bust.
Well, I'll say this, and did notice Rodriguez got some touches, but really I think that affects Antonio Gibson more than Robinson. Gibson's the one who's being completely phased out of this offense. I think he'll get better. There have been some tough matchups for Washington. Not trying to be an apologist for B-Rob, but look, the volume I think is enough that I gotta stay with him. 325 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns, also 113 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. I think I would keep him because I'm not going to get enough on the trade market, and I'm going to trust that he gets better. Now let's get to some receivers here. Let's talk about DeAndre Hopkins. A lot of question marks in this offense. We don't even know what the starting lineup is going to look like in a couple of weeks, but right now it looks like a backup quarterback for week 8. Are you going to trust in the track record and the talent or not?
Yeah, this is a guy I didn't like in the preseason. Once he went to the Titans, I was pretty much off of him. Said he was just a floor play, which is pretty much what he's been all year outside of that one big game and the great matchup. Now we're looking at potentially a backup quarterback. They may trade Ryan Tannehill. They may trade Derrick Henry. Yeah, I just cannot feel good about him or this offense going forward. DeAndre Hopkins, for me, definitely a bust.
You know, my knee-jerk reaction here is it's DeAndre Hopkins. He's the only receiver there in town we're throwing to. Treylon Burks is hurt still. Nobody else of interest. He's just going to get the targets. But you know what? Now that I think about it, he's been getting the targets. He hasn't done anything with it. He hasn't even scored a single touchdown this year, and that touchdown upside isn't going to increase, especially with backup quarterbacks. So I'm going to have to reverse course here. I'm going to say that Hopkins is going to be a bust unless somehow he gets traded. Let's talk about another kind of anemic passing offense, but with a guy who's become a target hog, surprisingly. That's Kendrick Bourne in New England. Is the volume there enough to make you trust him?
Well, again, I'm going to put a little caveat on this one and say, like, it depends how you look at him. I mean, if you're looking at Kendrick Bourne as a guy you're putting in your lineup every week and feeling good about, then, yeah, you might have a little bit too much trust in him. But I think if you look at him as like a guy like, hey, upside flex play, upside wide receiver 3, you're in a pinch, you know, you don't have better, you got bye weeks, you got injuries, then in that case for me, yeah, I think he's a trust.
I don't know if we're allowed to put asterisks. That's like more of a baseball thing. But I will say I'm going to chase the volume here. He's pretty much the only show in town. 16 catches the last 2 weeks alone. But I really like this upcoming schedule for Bourne and the Patriots. Get Miami, Washington, and Indianapolis, some teams that give up a lot to wide receivers. So I'm going to say for now, trust. And then let's move on to the Green Bay passing offense. Also been struggling lately, but Romeo Doubs has been fantasy relevant. Do you think that continues?
Well, can I take the cop out again like I did with Kendrick Bourne? I'm going to say if you view him in the right way, meaning, a wide receiver 3 with decent touchdown upside or a flex play with decent touchdown upside that you can put in during bye weeks when you're in a pinch, then I'll say, yes, you can trust him.
I'm going to trust him. I don't think any cop out needed here. Look, people don't realize that he is a legit wide receiver 3 in fantasy. He's got more fantasy points per game than Deebo Samuel, Devontae Smith, Tyler Lockett, Amari Cooper, and Drake London. I mean, if you feel good about those guys, sure, he doesn't have the track record, but he's been productive. And now with Christian Watson also potentially injured or at least battling an injury, yeah, I like Dobbs. I think he's the wide receiver I'm going to trust most in that offense. And then we may be seeing Brock Purdy, one-time MVP candidate, at least in some people's minds, falling down to earth. 2 straight bad games for him after destroying Dallas. So, where are you on the Brock Purdy train?
I'm pretty much back where I started with Brock Purdy. I started on hey, if you're in a 2QB Superflex league, sure, you can start Brock Purdy. And then I kind of bought into maybe this guy's going to be good for fantasy. And now I'm kind of back in the 2QB Superflex only. So since we're probably talking mostly to people who play in 1QB leagues here, I'm going to say bust.
I'm just going to go ahead and say bust because I'm never really going to consider him in a single QB league, in a 12-team league. This is a guy who gets by on efficiency because that's what this offense is built on. Just get the ball in the hands of the playmakers. But the problem is he's never going to have high volume because they got a good defense and they really don't need to throw the ball that much when they have Christian McCaffrey. So bottom line, the upside isn't enough. I think that he's a bust. That's our take on some of the most controversial players in fantasy football these days. Don't forget, you want to set your winning lineups, and we've got what you need. Check out our Week 8 playlist right here.